I was touring with Jacob because I was looking through my photo albums, and it just, I don't know, it feels like just yesterday.
So when was it that you were opening for him? That was before,
I
that
think
was
it was,
early summer?
I think it might have been May last year. Or was it June last year? Yeah.
Okay,
So like right now.
So it was about a year ago, and I remember Jacob being so excited, and I remember being really sad because I wasn't going to be coming to any of those shows, and he loved every minute, and then
Aww.
and I don't know how it felt to you to dip into the tour in that kind of a way, and yes, just what it felt like. I mean, first of all, doesn't it feel like a long time ago?
It's one of those things when you're doing so much in such a small amount of time that you almost need photos to remind you of what you did.
Yeah.
So it went now. I mean, I remember thinking like, wow, this is going to be like, because it was just duo. It was me and Randy Runyon.
Yeah.
And we were just gearing up. You know that feeling before tour? You're like,
Yes.
okay, we're doing this. We're
Yes.
going to do it. And then it just like in 2 seconds was over, which I think it means that we were having fun. That's usually what that means. Because when things take long, it's because you don't want to be doing that.
Do you know, it's really true. Although I think when things are long and you go through that arduous patch, you can kind of come through, and then once you're getting near the end and you can see the light literally at the end of the tunnel, you're kind of feeling, this is okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it's always this anticipation that kind of, there's an illusion of like, this is going to be this way. But once you're in it, when you're focused, it's a sort of meditation if you really can focus in on what you're doing.
I think it's really true. And I wonder whether you saying this right now in 2025 is what you would have said if we were having this conversation 20 years ago.
Wow. Interesting. I wonder as well. I think 20 years ago, everything was just really, really even scarier than it is now.
I agree. Because, right? Exactly.
Yeah. I think it was just, and it was all or nothing. Like it was like make or break. Every gig was like, oh, I ruined it. I'm destroyed. My career is over before it started. That kind of, I don't know, that youthful like passion. And yeah.
I think it's really important that you say that it's easier now. And I think I would say exactly the same thing. And does that mean that we are just finally beginning to get it, like really beginning to get it right now? But that the make or break thing that we felt when we were teenagers, was it necessary to think, oh no, I didn't do a great job on that, and so my career is over? Was it necessary that we went through that? Yes or no?
That's a great question. Let me think about that. Is it necessary? I think that the other side of being so destroyed about feeling like you didn't do your best or you failed is that you care so much. And I think it's just in our makeup as human beings to when something is new, you care a lot about it. And I love where I am now because I there's like a joy and a comfort in knowing that life goes on, no matter how you think you did on a show or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
But I think if we didn't have that real anxious feeling as young people, maybe we wouldn't do anything because we wouldn't want to prove ourselves.
Do you know, maybe you're right. And the funny thing is that when I was out driving this morning, I put on the radio and this woman was talking about this very thing. It's just interesting because it's just come up now. And she said, actually, I give myself a rule now, and anybody who works for me, if you've made a mistake, you can wallow in it for 24 hours. And that could mean anything. Oh, no, my career's over, or that was just so awful, or I've lost all my friends, or whatever it happens to be. And then she said that after that time, you need to make a list of the things that you've learned, but also to fess up to your mistakes. Now, I don't know what that really means, because I think she's talking about a work situation when you're in an office. And I think sometimes what we're like when we're on stage is we feel that we have mucked up because we're seeing things from our perspective. But the people who are watching and listening are not feeling that at all. So the idea of fessing up to our mistakes, I think, is slightly different here. But I liked the idea of her saying we can wallow in it for a day. And then after that, you make your list about what you've learned. And that sounds quite harsh, but she just says it's been the most freeing thing. I've never quite thought about it like that. How do you feel about that?
I enjoy. I think it's good. I think it's you don't want to fast forward through a feeling, because that's the whole point of being alive, is to, like, and that is how we grow. I think you beat yourself up for different reasons. Maybe you actually made a mistake, which should always be forgiven, I think, but also maybe you're just like very self-conscious, because there's been times where I perform and I felt good at the show, and then I listen back and I'm like, oh, and then I feel so if you can allow yourself to feel these things, and then maybe when you write down, did you say writing down the confession, or what you learned? Writing down what you learned.
So what we learn, we write down.
Right. Well, that's just important, because you're less likely to repeat the same habit if you write down and take note of what's going on in your life. Then you can say, okay, I'm acknowledging this, and I'd like to do something different next time. So maybe, I love that. I'm gonna start doing it. I've stopped journaling for a while.
Yes,
so I have to get back into it. Yeah. Good to know.
And because I think it's something that I know that it can feel really good to do it, and yet sometimes it just doesn't feel the right kind of time. Now, maybe this isn't quite journaling, but maybe we can add it in and squirrel it away as one of our bits of process when we've done a gig. But I wonder whether we can also put in another caveat, which would be, we're going to listen to that recording, and it's never easy, is it, to just sort of think, okay, here we go. And I'd really love to talk to you about that. But perhaps before we listen to it back, or when we have listened to it back, we make the effort to make sure that we've had feedback from other people who were at the gig, who may well have just said, this is the best gig and it's really changed my life. So that we got some kind of balance in there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, it's true. I mean, generally speaking, the collective experience that we have is not really fully represented by an audio recording. You just can't. I mean, I'm talking about live performances, of course. And you can still enjoy an audio recording. Don't get me wrong. That's the whole point of records and what we do. But if it felt good in the room, and you're watching Tina Turner give her all, and then you go back and you're listening to judge if she hit the notes every time, those are two different analytical things happening. And I just sometimes don't listen back to my performances. Yes. Sometimes I just go with the feedback from the people. And my family, who will give me the real truth, but they're artists, so they understand that it's a process, and they'll say, "What do you think about fixing that transition between those songs, or changing the key in that other song?" So that's actually useful information.
It is, but I want to ask you about that because, of course, I grew up with violinist parents. Wow. So it's a kind of a similar thing, right? Okay, so you have your beautiful parents who are singers, and they know the business, and they know what it means to deliver on that stage. I wonder whether it has always been easy to hear from them and say, "Mom, Dad, I love you. You can say anything you like," and to not sort of take it in such a personal way that you just think, "Oh no, that was awful," or "I feel." Very, very small. Has it always been straightforward and easy to take whatever they say to you?
Well, it's a great question. I'm trying to remember. I think that as I grew to know them as people, as I became an adult, and I realized that the critiques of any person is based on our tastes. And so
Very true.
there's no it's all subjective. So for instance, my amazing father, who I love so dearly, one of his main critiques is that I kind of expect
Okay.
is that he can't hear my vocal over the band, or that he wants me to enunciate words more.
Yeah.
And so I've sort of grown to learn the critiques of certain family members, but I do think that it comes always from a loving place, and it's probably easier now than when I was younger, to answer your question. Yeah, I think I was more sensitive to everything when I was younger, more take things more personally. You thought you did really well, and then somebody says something, and you're like, man, why'd you have to burst my balloon? I was, that kind of thing.
Yes. Well, I would completely agree. And maybe that is just the essence of what it's like to just find your own feet. But I love the idea that Dad, who I know you love him absolutely to bits.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he says, actually, it'd be great if you enunciate a bit more and, hey, the balance or whatever. And I think that's really funny, because I would say that my dear dad, God rest his soul, would also say very similar things. He'd say, look, in that concert hall, you can dig in so much more into the string because no one's going to get that. Otherwise, it's going to be like this. You've got to go ga 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 ga,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's really important that you realize that in certain halls and certain acoustics, that's what you're going to do. And then when you're in a different kind of acoustic, which feels very naked and dry, you're not going to do that in quite that way in order to warm up the auditorium. And I also think that, the balance always with the piano. My dear dad would always say, well, I think the soft pedal should be jammed down on a piano, and the lid should be closed. And I know that's not a very popular way to think about it. And maybe if he was still alive now, he would say, "Oh, come on, I was a bit extreme in those days." But I think it's interesting that both our pops are saying things about how clear sound is. And
interesting.
Yes, and
wow.
and also
Is
the balance. Yeah.
I love hearing about that. How did you take that from Dad? I mean, was he did he have a bedside manner, like kind of lay it on easy, or was it a little bit like hardcore?
I think neither. I think he just said it very much as it was to his ears, knowing that it's his ears, knowing that he's heard me, he's taught me, he's heard me practice and rehearse and then perform.
Wow.
So when I was a student at the Royal Academy of Music, when he was a professor there, and I learnt with him for my first year there, and carried on the process of childhood, he would literally say, "That was really great. Now, do you want to hear the other things that I've got to say?" And I would get a kind of a flutter, thinking,
yeah, you're like, oh, I don't want to really hear it.
Tomorrow, no, just tell me now. Honestly, just always so incredibly useful. Never saying it to be a power tool. Never saying it to be anything other than, I just want you to be the best version of yourself on that stage. And I guess maybe that's how I am with my own children. This kind of, it's fantastic. It's absolutely wonderful. Do you want to hear anything else in there? And they might say yes, or they might say no. And I think it's about just where that's coming from and what you are doing it for. I think maybe that's the important thing.
I love that. I love it. I mean, it's so, it's really special to have someone so close to your heart who is like, wants you to succeed, but also knows the ins and outs of what you're trying to do. And they, it's just, I'm really, really grateful, because I didn't have a proper schooling, but I had them, and I still have. I'm grateful to have them and my brother.
When you say you didn't have proper schooling, I really want to I really want to understand what you mean by that, because by saying that, you're kind of expecting that I've got a proper idea or I've got an
Right.
understanding of a proper idea of schooling. But
Right.
what do you really mean by that?
Well, one of the questions I get is like, where'd you go to school? Did you go to school for music? And music aside, like public school was just not the best. Growing up, my elementary school, PS3, where I went in the Village of New York City, that was probably the best schooling that I ever had. And it was
In the elementary school.
People tell
Okay.
me they said, where'd you go to college? I was like, PS3. That was my college. But
I like that. So if it was elementary, you were knee high to a grasshopper. What is that? Like
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
4 to 7 or something? Or
yeah, it's like it was preschool to 6th grade, and then 7th became middle school.
oh, okay. So it's a slightly bigger age. Oh, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
your education that you really, really enjoyed. So
Yeah.
I want you to say what you enjoyed about PS3, okay? And then what happened when you moved on from this beautiful elementary school to wherever you went next? So what did you like
Yeah.
about the elementary school?
Well, it was located in the West Village of New York City, which is very diverse, all kinds of people there. So we went to school with all different kinds of people, and it was commonplace for us to have teachers who were gay and non-binary and all sorts of things. So it was like later I'm like, what's the problem, everybody? Like, this is
Oh,
just
no.
normal stuff. But so I really appreciate that that early on experience, just being surrounded by all different kinds of people. Then on top of that, the arts were very much celebrated. And there was, we would knit, and we had dance, and it was just very much, it was one of those things where you don't think twice. It's like, yeah, of course we have art. I learned also hard lessons there. I learned about bullies. I had a couple of bullies. So I think at the time, maybe I wasn't like, this is the best experience
No.
ever. But in perspective, moving on into high school and even middle school, so certain things were missing from those experiences. And, it's weird to think that art is thought of as an extracurricular activity. It's just so strange. Music, extracurricular. Like, yeah, but we don't do that after school. So it was challenging to sit in these classes and not have my passion being like encouraged. So
I think you put it so beautifully well, but it's a little bit poignant, isn't it? Because there's much more we can say about the school experience. But if you had all the pennies that you needed to make education better for the kids growing up, so that music, which is, I guess, not just your passion, but it is so much part of your soul and your spirituality and your everything. You can tell by the way you sing. You just can tell. So I hope I'm not speaking out of turn by saying that. But
no, it's completely true.
But how would you spend those pennies in order to stop and put a kind of a cross through extracurricular and say that, well, obviously we do your math now, and then we do the music, and then we do it, but in a way that means that it's equal, in the same way that we have diversity in the elementary school, and we have diversity of subjects, and bringing equality to the subjects. So how would you do it? So I've given you all the pennies in the world.
Well, I think it's not to be advertised as something for gifted students. It's not. It's everyone, for everyone. It's a useful tool as a form of expression. I mean, it's so many things, but in order for children to communicate how they really feel. My parents, they used to teach schools every morning, and we would go and sit and watch them, and they had a band play for them, and there was like
Oh,
all these kids, these like inner city kids that they never saw an upright bass before or anything like that. And it was just so cute. And they would run up to the drummer and, can I hit the snare? Well, they didn't say snare because they didn't know the word. But one of the activities they did was they would sing the blues, and my parents would give them this like, like a little song that they could easily sing, and they would go around and be like, what do you have the blues about? Well, my sister pulls my hair, and then I can't, my mom's too tired to play with me, and all these things. Like, it was, I was a child, but I was moved to tears as even a child, because here are these like little kids that no grown-ups don't listen to them. They don't have time to listen to them. I could even just cry thinking about it.
oh yes.
And it's like they're being heard through this song.
Yes.
And how much anxiousness that children feel and fear. And it gave them an avenue to release that stress, even just for that couple of minutes. And I think that it's not to be underestimated that music can release these stressful feelings that we all have. And it just makes the day easier, and that turns into a week and a month, and the way that we treat each other based on the releasing those feelings. It's just like you can't even calculate the effect that has on society and just going throughout the day. So I would just encourage it in some sort of way to relate to just like a basic, I know like therapy is popular now. Having a therapist is popular. Music is therapy. So that's how I suppose. But I don't know. I'm not in the education system, so there must be a lot of red tape to try to get those ideas happening. But
I don't know, but you were given all the pennies in the world, and what you did is you cloned your parents in the band a zillion times, so that they could go into not just to elementary school, but middle school and high school to continue the process. Sure. And to say that music lessons is not just about following a curriculum that means you learn about the blues, and obviously historically it is really important that we do learn about the blues, but they are experiencing what it feels like to actually experience the blues, to express the blues, to learn how to sing, but also I think for your parents to be so forward looking as to ask them questions like, what's been giving you the blues? And it's funny, isn't it? You say, oh, my sister pulls my hair, or whatever it is. And that brings you to tears just thinking about that. And I think what's so special is that you're not belittling the problems that people are feeling at aged 5 or 6. What you're saying is it's a beautiful and moving thing that they can express it in a safe situation.
Right.
And then not only that, but to sing with the band that they've never experienced before. I mean,
what a thrill.
How outrageous is it?
Yeah. And then all the other kids would be like, one kid would say something funny, and the kids would go, oh my God, it's so great. Woo. It was just the sweetest thing ever. But also, to your point, it's so important to teach about history through music.
Yes.
History of America, of the world.
Yes.
Slavery. I mean, I learned about all the tragedies. They really, I guess I went to a liberal school, but they really taught us about these horrible things that human beings do to each other. And I remember thinking like, whoa, did I sign up for this? But it's so important to know history and what happened. And music is a great way to teach that.
I think it is. And I think my hope is that music education can become this canvas whereby so many subjects are accessed via music. And just like in regular history lessons, my hope is that we have a society throughout the world that means that we can teach it in a balanced way without a bias that really favours the country that we're in. and that we can learn about what feels fair and what doesn't feel fair, and just how tricky it was in years past. And I think, yes, we can learn so much about the blues tradition historically, but every music going all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. All the different cultures and everything. I mean, it's such a wonderful bridge to learning about history. And music is fun. It's like how about fun being important in as a child or as a grown up?
Yes.
Playfulness and fun is just, it's like healthy. It's good for you.
It is. So you, dear heart, did go through middle school and high school because you had to do it, right?
I had to.
Okay. So
I did leave high school at a certain point. But I got my GED. That's what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
And that was fine. Yeah.
So funny, isn't it? Because that's what you're supposed to do. So you get your ticket to ride, you leave high school, but in the meantime, you've been cooking up a storm. Probably not at school, but you were at home, you were with your parents, you were in your bedroom, presumably with recording all sorts of bits and pieces. But did you have any mates outside of your family with whom you were interacting in that bass kind of raw musical way in those early years before you left high school?
Oh, wow. Did I have any? I never had like a band. When I left high school, I started singing in restaurants, just singing jazz.
Oh, yeah.
With different musicians that were on the scene then. And I gotta say, I didn't have, not that I can recall right now, is like I didn't have any other musical friends at the time. I was pretty much brand new. But I did very quickly. My mother had introduced me to a lot of different people that she knew. She knew I was sure that I wanted to do music, and so she's like, well, she had these steps for me. First, it was get 10 songs together, and then I'll get you a gig at the bitter end.
Because
yeah, Dan Casio was our neighbor, and he booked the place at the time, and then the next step was, we'll demo 3 songs, and then I'll play it for my friend Bill Brown, who worked at ASCAP, which is a performing rights association.
Right. Yeah.
As you know, I'm just telling people. But then Bill introduced me to a bunch of different producers, and I really hit it off with this one guy named Chucky Thompson. And he became my musical buddy when I was 18.
Okay, so Chucky comes into your life when you're 18. Mum is amazing because she's actually saying, listen, dear girl, you get your 10 songs together, all right? You get them together, which must mean that you had to create things that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Something that evolved, something that felt whole, something that perhaps some of them you were more sure of than others, but you had to produce 10.
Yeah.
Then you get the gig. Then the idea is that you demo 3 songs, and then you get to speak to Bill Brown. Bill Brown introduced you to lots of people, including Chucky Thompson. So it seems like, in a sense, it was a really concentrated experience in a very short amount of time. Because if you weren't really doing this kind of stuff when you were at school because life was too full and you did have to fulfill your the things you needed to do at school, then you did this in a really short amount of time. So if you've done all this and you're only 18 and you've met Chucky Thompson, what happened next, and why did you bond with Chucky? Why was Chucky the person that you just thought, oh, yeah?
Wow. First of all, I'm so impressed with your notation. You're so on. You're such a good listener. It's amazing. I'm like, wow, she's recalling the names and everything. Thank you. So Chucky was a sweetheart. He was a sweet person. He was maybe 35 when I met him, which is crazy because I'm older than that now. Which
Oh, how
is,
funny.
Like, he felt like such a grown-up then. And he was just like a big guy, like a teddy bear kind of guy, you know. And I remember he took me to, was it Tower Records? And he bought me like 100 CDs. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's rich. It was just, I'd never seen anything like that before. But mostly he was responsible for some of these songs that I grew up listening to in middle school when hip hop and R&B was like #1 on the radio. And he did these songs with Biggie, and Mary J. Blige and Nas and all these people.
Crikey! Wow!
It was amazing. He played every instrument, just a natural born musician. You know, really had this amazing pocket and sense of rhythm. And he was just fun and really sweet guy. He was funny. So I decided I feel safe with him, and I think he understands what I'm trying to do, and let's try it together. So, of course, I'm naive. I don't understand how production deals work or even record deals, but I just knew that I wanted the big time, and he felt like the big time to me.
Okay. So we got this thing in the sky that's wanting the big time. But before we get to the big time...
We didn't get to the big time. That's so
maybe we're still going there. But I think you mentioned the word that's really important to me, which is pocket. And the thing about pocket is that it seems to me that whenever I just need an Emily night, okay, and we have these Emily nights.
That's so sweet.
And we just have to play you in all your different incarnations over the years. It's really, it's quite.
That's really sweet.
No, but it's really true. And the thing that I really feel, I can't speak for the rest of the family, but right now I feel that the pocket that you inhabit, you talk about Chucky being a safe place. I feel that when you establish the pocket in each of your songs, that I don't care whether it feels like a light groove or something that's so deep in there that I could almost sort of sink in there for a long time before hearing the next beat. I feel safe to inhabit whatever you're going to throw at me emotionally, or in whatever kind of a way. So I really want to ask you about the essence of the pocket and whether that for you comes first and then you sit upon it and then you let the lyrics just come out, or whether pocket is just somewhere along the line that you create with a whole host of other people kind of helping you along the way. I don't know how you perceive it, but that's how it feels for me to listen to you.
Wow, that is such a cool... First of all, thank you. That is such a sweet... I'm so flattered that you listen to me. Thank you, Suzie. I've never heard it put in that way, where the pocket is a safe place. That is so on the money for me. And I think most people, there's something about the rhythm and the groove that when it is solid, you know it's coming. And you know it's going to hit you in the right way. It's not going too fast. It's not going too slow. It's just, it's a safe place. It's brilliant. I do feel that way with rhythm. I always just really loved rhythmic singing and the space in between the beat. I like surprise, the element of surprise sometimes. And I feel... there was a time I remember when I was starting to learn how to play guitar that I was so frustrated because my arm wouldn't create the rhythm that I heard. And I was like, I just didn't have, it's like learning how to drive and you just don't have your motor functions. But for hours and hours, I sat in the bathroom and I was just like, you have to learn to do what I want you to do, because I just loved the consistency of the tempo of something. So I don't feel that everybody, needs to feel music the same way, but there is something so fascinating about the pocket. And Chucky had pocket like nobody else. He used to play congas with a really legendary singer named Chuck Brown.
Okay.
Who was Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, and he was a native DC. He pretty much invented go-go, which is a subgenre of music that's really only in DC. It's native to DC. And Chucky would bring me to these go-go's where Chuck Brown was playing. And basically, the whole genre is based on a rhythm. And the whole night, every song is to this same rhythm. And so Chucky would be playing, for hours this rhythm, and I just was in love with that concept. And so, yes, the idea of pocket is like first on my list. I don't know, it's probably melody first and then pocket second.
Oh, melody first, then pocket second.
Yeah, I think definitely.
Okay. So where in our sandwich of layers do you put lyrics, or do you put that with melody as well?
Well, I put lyrics third. I don't know if that's a popular opinion, but I'm not a natural born poet. So because of my strengths, which are not poetry, I really try to hone in on melody. But I'm so fascinated with songwriting because when the three things come together, like the arrangement, the lyrics, and the melody, when they come together and each one is separately expressing the emotion of the story, that's the most amazing thing in the whole world to me. It's just like, boom, you did it. Like, and it has happened so many times. All of the songs that we love, right?
It's really true. But isn't it interesting that you're saying, look at these three different factors. We've got the melody in the pocket and the lyrics. And if they're all banging and they're all popping and they're all sparkling, then we are truly expressing that emotion in the way that it's kind of not possible to do it any more than that. It's just it's giving everything that it can, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, first of all, that you say you're not a natural poet. I would not have guessed that. And I think it's not for me or anybody to say to you, oh, no, that's not right. I can say to you that your lyrics are very powerful to me and I really love them. But maybe it sometimes can be a struggle to get there. But I like the idea that you say, well, I'm going to put lyrics third, and maybe that's not the popular way. And it doesn't matter what the popular way is, because intrinsically and authentically that this is your way. So it's the best way, right?
Right. Which comes with age, because you're like, you know what? My limitations are my strengths. That has to be true.
I think so. But I really also want to say that if you think about what we were saying so many minutes ago, you said that Chucky Thompson has always been a safe place for you. And I think as a teenager, we are really vulnerable with regard to who we meet and who we listen to.
Yeah.
And this man is obviously the most wonderful human being. But I love the fact that you say that he really was able, whether it was congas in Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, or whether it was whatever he was doing, that he really understood pocket, and that was a really safe place to be. We talked about him being really safe as a human being.
Interesting.
Right?
Ah, yeah.
So
that combination is important to me, because then I met the next producer who was also very pocket, strong.
But how did you meet the next producer after Chucky? How did that happen? And was it just a sense of evolution, not a kind of, oh well, I've moved on and here I am now? Was it just a kind of a natural evolution? How did it work?
Yeah, it was totally by chance. I wasn't pursuing anybody else. After I met Chucky, we went through about 4 years of working together, and it was a big process of, being with a major label and writing with a bazillion different people and figuring out that I didn't like doing that. And so I put out a record. I got dropped from that label. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in the interim, I remember I was doing gigs, and my guitar player at the time was saying, you got to meet this guy, Jay Most. He's so funny. That's all he kept saying. He's so funny. I'm like, well, what about his guitar playing? Is he any good? He's like, yeah, he's good. He's really good. And so when that guy, Ricky Strings, couldn't make the gig, I called Jay Most. And not only was he so funny, he actually was this brilliant musician and producer and had put out songs of his own that became popular amongst musicians that I knew. And so we started playing in the band. We fell in love, I think. You have to ask him separately.
Okay, when I see him, I'll definitely, if it feels appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you. And then I was like, well, should we just try to make some music together? And I do remember him saying, because I had gone through some growing pains with my first album of compromising my creativity and my integrity because I wanted to be famous. And I put out music that I really wasn't in love with, and I remember how bad that felt. So he was like, yeah, we can work together, but just don't do that again. We're not going to put out anything unless we really love it. And that was not easy to do. I had to learn from then on how to be patient with the process. It was very challenging.
But you're only around 22 when this is happening, from what I gather.
Yeah, right.
So Jay Most comes into your life. Yes, you fall in love. That's a great thing. But also he seems to be someone who is able to give you a bit of wisdom at the time that you resonated with, because it could have just been over the head, but it resonated. And so you're saying that, you compromise your creativity and your integrity with the first album, and he's saying, hey, you know something? We're not going to put out anything until we really, really love it. But
right.
You're saying that you did that because you had the idea of, wanting to be famous. And again, you mentioned earlier about wanting the big time. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, where did that idea come from in the first place, that expectation? Mm-hmm. And secondly, how easy was it to kind of evolve into somebody for whom that wasn't perhaps the most important thing, to kind of people please in that way? So where did the expectation come from?
Wow. Yes, people pleasing is a big part of it. Well, I always wanted to be on the Grammys. I think that when I was a kid, before the internet, we had the Grammys was like the Super Bowl. I mean, it was huge.
Oh, yes.
We loved watching.
Oh, yeah.
Music videos and artists were just bigger than life because there was only a select few who made it through the success gatekeepers. And I remember thinking, well, I want to be signed to Clive Davis because he's the one who makes people big stars. And I did. I got signed to him, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that I actually had to learn that what makes you feel good about yourself is not outside perception of success. Mm-hmm. It's that you're doing your best, basically. Did I do my best? Was I true to myself? It sounds very very typical. But I learned that because I remember being at the Grammys, because my album got nominated for a Grammy, and I got to go to the Grammys. And I was not proud of myself. I was not proud of myself because I had these other friends in the music scene who were not signed to labels, and they were making what I thought was very beautiful, creative music, sophisticated music. And I thought that I was trying to fit into this other thing that wasn't me. And I knew better, but I still went along with it because I had grown-ups telling me that's what I should be doing. And I'm a people pleaser, so I just did it. You know?
But it feels really quite natural that you would do that. And I'm really sorry that that first experience at the Grammys didn't quite feel fantastic to you. I'm sorry that you already seem to have the awareness that
it's such a silly thing to be like complaining about. I realize that, you know.
No, I don't think it's a silly thing to be complaining about. But I think what really strikes me is that you were so aware of your friends and colleagues who were not signed to labels and who maybe had that kind of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happened with you and your relationship with any labels after that time?
I didn't trust them. I didn't want to be in the situation where I would be convinced to go against myself.
Okay.
Because I knew I was a bit fragile at that point. You know, I was a little susceptible to that sort of influence. And when I started working with Jeremy Most is his name, it was just us. And it felt really good to just be with someone who I trusted, who wasn't tied to making money. You know, it wasn't about money anymore. Like, it was about just, can we do something great, like that we really are proud of? And it was fun because we were just like building from the ground up, and it wasn't like I had already had my bubble burst about trying to be like whatever I thought was a successful musician.
Yes. But then J-Most doesn't necessarily last for the rest of your career in this particular capacity. So then what happens? How long did this sojourn last for you both? This journey of evolution together, which took you to wonderful places.
Thank you. It lasted until my last record. About 2 years ago. Yeah. We, you know, he was the most important person in my life and never missed a gig. I mean, we did all the music together. I relied heavily on him, as he did me, but, you know, he did all the production. He played everything on the record. I did some stuff too. I did a lot, but I relied on him. And it was a very codependent type of relationship. He was my boyfriend.
Yes.
You know. And during the pandemic, as a lot of couples, things come to light. I think that there were certain things that couldn't be reconciled in that way as going forward as two people in a relationship. And so we had to transition out of that, which is very hard. And it's still hard, but he's sort of like, you know, when people are just like always so important to you, no matter what.
Absolutely.
If they're friends or if they're a boyfriend or whatever, I just always will feel a connection to him. but we don't make music anymore. So it's forced me to try to do things that I historically relied on him to do, and so I didn't have to exercise certain muscles. So I'm grateful that I am now, he's almost forcing me to be stronger in these other ways by not doing everything.
You're so eloquent in the way that you paint this particular picture. And there's something that feels so real about the fact that you're saying the transition was hard. No, it is hard. And I love the fact that you can just truthfully say that, because I think the more that you acknowledge the truth of it, the more you will be able to embrace whatever is going to happen now. And I think that I also think it's interesting that you look upon the pandemic as being a kind of a revealer, a clarity of feeling in there. And that it feels quite painful to hear about that, because the pandemic was such a raw time anyway. But if you were in a relationship that you'd enjoyed for such a very, very long time, and the penny's beginning to drop and you're both beginning to realise that maybe this isn't the way, then that in its essence is hard. So yes, you're saying that maybe you are developing muscles, flexing muscles, building muscles that you haven't had to, but maybe you're able to open your heart and your soul and your spirit to embrace other people who can really help you along that process, so that you don't have to carry everything.
Thank you, Suzie. That is definitely, something that I need to work on, because now I do feel, and there's certain control that comes with wanting to do everything.
Yes.
And it's not as fun because you can't celebrate with everyone who was involved, which is,
that's right.
Which is so, it's what life is about. It's community and everything. But I think what the pandemic, it was almost like when people have empty nest sort of thing, where their purpose, like you'll have a couple whose purpose was being the parent of this child, and then the child goes to college and they're like, now I have to face you. Do I like, is this strong enough, just us, without our purpose was gone? And our purpose was always music. And when we didn't have any more shows or anything going on, then things sort of they just changed. But I am so grateful for all I've learned so much from him. And I mean, so it's just,
I wonder whether this takes us back full circle to being able to say that we're so grateful for all the people who've come in our lives to make us who we are, but that you're reflecting on something which is not that easy, and you're saying, I've kind of made my list of the things that I have learned in the same way that we were talking about earlier.
I love that. Wow. That's a great, so you can do that with a big picture as well as your little,
I think so, but that's what you've just done right now, and it feels such a privilege to be able to just enter into your world in such a huge way. And I really realise, absolutely honestly, that there are going to be a zillion more conversations that the two of us are going to have together, just because I think when we see each other, it's going to be non-stop.
I love it. You're gonna bring me to tears every time.
I think you may have the capacity to do the same. And I want to just say thank you so much for this conversation and for your time and for your just generosity of spirit and your warmth and your honesty. Honestly, I feel so lucky.
Suzie, you are such a special woman, and I'm just very grateful to know you. And you're, I follow you, and you're always inspiring others, and you're so full of joy, and I mean, you've created this amazing universe, and it shows in so many ways. I mean, Jacob included, of course, but I'm looking forward to hanging out with you more.
Okay, that's a real date. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.